before I start, I'm sort of surrounded by people who are doing a lot of very, very good work. And I'm hoping that all of you have a chance to actually go to their websites, look them up, because it's an exemplary set of people really making a difference in this ecosystem. Before we really start, what I would really like to do is have each one of you sort of introduce yourselves a little bit more. And what we would really like to know is, and I'm sure the people here would, what was that one insight or vision that made you sort of start out in this space, and what are you doing, right? Because that's something, your personal journeys into why you're building this is important for us to know.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Dinesh. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Rapti. We're an electric motorcycle company based out of Chennai. Interestingly, our factory is right around the corner, a 5-minute drive from here. We're a 6-year-old company. We've been in R&D for the larger part of our 6 year of existence. We just started sales in March, and we've been selling a few bikes every month since then. What we do is we make motorcycles on what we call a high voltage drivetrain. The vision here is to make electric motorcycles a lot more seamless to own than petrol motorcycles can ever be, and also a lot more fun to own and ride, right? And that's the vision. The reason we started Rapti was very simple. When we started, in fact, the vision was never to start a motorcycle company or even a motorcycle brand. The vision there, or rather the problem that we wanted to solve, is when we started this journey in 2018, we realized that the motorcycle market was much larger than the scooter market in the ICE space, but every single product that was sold in the electric two-wheeler space was scooters. But 7-8 years since then, in 2025, that still remains the truth, where a large part of electric two-wheelers are still scooters. We wanted to understand, is there a technical problem that prevents people from making electric motorcycles, and what we could do about it. And that's why we exist. Nice.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shresht. I'm one of the co-founders at Simple Energy. We started back in 2019, September. So as Dinesh rightly said, that was the time when electric vehicles were booming, but majority of the players were the products which were being sold in India were just being imported from a neighboring country, rebranded and sold, right? But for example, it was like people opting for a product which was inferior to the existing IC engine products that they were using. So that is how we started Simple, to build products in India that could meet the requirements of the people, or give them the feel that what electric vehicles are capable of. Not just probably a commute for a daily commute purpose, but also to upgrade their experience in terms of what an electric vehicle can promise. So that is how we started, and today we have around 15 stores live, another 60 coming up in the next 6 months, and selling across south and the west region of the country.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Venkat Rajaraman, founder of Signi Energy. We were founded from IIT Madras. Professor Satya is right here. So it was about 10-11 years back. We have recently inaugurated our 4.8 gigawatt hour battery manufacturing facility. We are based out of Hyderabad with an R&D in Chennai. We have so far powered about 200,000 electric vehicles and about 200 megawatt hour of energy storage. The reason why we gotten into the energy storage is I'm a semiconductor guy, come from a semiconductor background. And battery, and unlike lead acid battery or unlike solar, battery is a very intelligent device. We believe that there is a lot of opportunity for semiconductors and software, and that was one of the main motivation for us to get into this. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm Satya Chakravarti, professor of aerospace engineering at IIT Madras and the founder of the E-Plane company as well as Amber Wakes. The idea of the E-Plane company was to make electric air taxis, what we call as eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So it's, in some sense, in this particular audience, it's a flying version of a EV. It's a glorified EV, if you will. And on our path we started this in 2019, and on our path to this, we have developed several smaller scale eVTOLs which are unmanned and therefore classify under drones. And we now have a separate 100% wholly owned subsidiary called Amber Wings to market the drones in the market for logistics and mapping or surveillance, any of those kinds of applications.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm representing Malaysian Zero Emission Vehicle Association. I'm Saravanan. I'm also into energy analytics. At the moment in Malaysia, we are focusing on location intelligence for CPOs, as well as we are doing something around load forecasting for the utilities when it comes to EV loads. So those are the two main things that we are doing in Malaysia. And I would like to know more from this panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So let me start with Dinesh and Shays. I was at a panel once at IT Bombay, sir, where someone said that the last real change in the design of automotive was when horses were replaced by engines and wheels, right? And now an EV, especially two-wheelers, for example, or four-wheelers or three-wheelers, look the same as an ICE vehicle, right? The only difference is really, maybe the number plate, right? So when you guys, really look at manufacturing, what is your design philosophy which sort of sets you apart? Which someone looks at those vehicles and say, yeah, this is Rapti or this is a simple energy vehicle.
No, I think before I answer that question, right, I think it's very important to give credit to where it's due. I think there's so much work that's happened in the ICE space. Just saying that motorcycles or vehicles haven't changed since, you had engines come into vehicles is, I think, taking it a little too far. But anyway, so I think for us, the vision again is how do you make a customer understand that an electric motorcycle can be a true upgrade, right? Let's say the easiest example that I'd like to choose is, let's say you drive an Innova, for example, as a daily driver. I come to you and say your car gives you 10 kilometers to the liter. I'll give you a car which is 3 times as efficient, 3 times better for the environment. From tomorrow, drive an Alto. You're not going to do that. The reason somebody buys an Innova versus an Alto is different. So the only reason somebody like you would upgrade to an electric car is if you're very convinced that the vehicle that you're buying into is an upgrade to whatever you're already riding, right? So, and that's essentially what we wanted to deliver. And this, while doing this, we also didn't want to make the vehicle look too futuristic and alienate the product where the customer is like, wait, that looks super cool, but I can never see myself riding that, right? So I think that's the balance that we kind of set out to achieve, and I really believe that's kind of where we are. Our motorcycle looks futuristic enough that it is recognized as an electric vehicle, but at the same time still has the traditional look of a tank and the body of a vehicle that people are still comfortable getting onto it and riding it. So that's kind of how we approach it. But more importantly, I think the parts that we really wanted to figure out is how do you bring charging speeds very close to how fast you would fuel your vehicle? What's the kind of realistic range that you want to give the vehicle to the extent that the customer really doesn't have to worry about charging, right? If you're telling the customer, okay, you're on average going to do 30-40 kilometers maximum a day, so I'm only going to give you that amount of range. Asking a customer, for example, to charge every night, I don't think is realistic. I think it's too much of an ask, right? So what we said was, okay, let's look at a week-long range, right? And even that, let's say we forget to charge and you want to charge really quick, how fast can you charge and where can you charge? You should be able to charge this in as quick as possible in every single charger that's already available. That's also something that we realized, where there is charging infrastructure for cars, but there's no charging infrastructure for two-wheelers. So we decided, okay, is there a way we can adopt the existing charging infrastructure that's already built for cars? Today, we're the only electric two-wheeler that can leverage the car charging infrastructure. So these are some of the things that we kind of thought very early on and said, okay, how do you kind of break these myths that customers already have to make a vehicle that people want to own because they want to own it, not just because of total cost of ownership or for an environmental friendliness?
Yeah, I mean, Dinesh covered most of the points that any OEM or any product company should focus on while designing the product, right? When you're talking about customers, you have to understand what are the challenges or roadblocks that the customer has in adopting a new technology when we talk about, right? So we at Simple were focusing on 3 major issues. One is the reliability part. Second was bringing performance as well as mileage together. That is where our product Simple One came in with a 200 plus kilometer certified range, acceleration of 0 to 40 in under 2.7 seconds, all of that bringing together. At the same time, not compromising on the comfort side of it, right? Because when we talk about the product segment that we are in, it is a product that will be used for a customer ranging from probably 18 years to 60 years of age as well. So to make sure that the customer segment that we're targeting, we are able to give the kind of value proposition, at the same time not also making it very expensive for the customers. So you have to understand what is the target segment that you're targeting, and at the same time build products according to the requirement of the market that you're focusing on. Specifically when we talk about India, where the temperature ranges from -5 to 50 degrees Celsius, the government definitely says only 2 people are allowed, but you will see 3-4 people also doing that, right? Say, riding a single scooter, single vehicle. So all of that has to be taken into consideration while designing a product, at the same time testing, validating, and then probably taking it to the production stage. So all of that we had a word with the team, with the customers that we could reach out to, because being a startup, you do not have the luxury of spending a lot on market research and all of that. So whatever limited people that you can reach out, understand their problem, and then build a product accordingly.
Which brings me to an important point, Venkat, because you, I think, work with both traditional OEMs as well as startups, right? And I think both Dinesh and Shresh have sort of alluded to, how they look at this and how they're trying to solve for maybe a specific customer set and what are the challenges that they face, right? So Venkat, from your perspective, when you work with, let's say, traditional OEMs and startups, do you see a difference in their concentration or what they require or what they ask for?
Yeah, so it's a I think big difference between the startup and the traditional OEM. Traditional OEM, if they come with a lot of manufacturing prowess. They come with a very strong supply chain. They come with a very strong market linkage and so on. So the kind of thing they look at it is the product quality, product performance. They are all given, right? So that becomes the hygiene factors. And then you sort of start working with them in terms of, what else could you do, right? And of course, you will have to open up your, entire BOM, entire manufacturing facility, all of them, because it goes through multiple rounds of audits and so on and so forth. Whereas with the startup, it's a very different one, because the startups comes with a lot of innovative ideas, right? For example, I would like to see a swapping batteries which would have a state of function built in, right? Can you tell me what is the remaining light left which I can use it for my swapping operators? So it's I think very different sort of mindset that you sort of work with, but to tell you, I think there is a learning on both the sides, and you will have to sort of traverse that both of them, in a very different manner, I think.
Speaking of course, innovation and how startups sort of have to move fast and innovate. Professor Chakravarti, e-plane and flying taxis is an extremely innovative idea, right? What has been your experience in people buying into the ideas and just the whole logistical nightmare, that I'm sure this will. We just saw a robo taxi being launched, right? And there's already, if you go on Twitter, there's a virtual battle. Right? How do you look at this space, and how critical is innovation for startups to really be able to do something that we believe traditional OEMs would not be able to do?
Yeah, so I think the need for air taxis is fairly well evident in many Indian cities. With the kind of traffic condition that we face, and many times people kind of sweat saying that when is this air taxi going to come, we would like to actually fly. But then they don't realize that it's actually not as easy as getting into the car for at your doorstep and getting over there. So that's the problem that we are trying to solve, over and above what a typical eVTOL would do. So we want to essentially be able to make a extremely short footprint eVTOL that can land hopefully on most people's rooftops, and pick them up from where they are to go to where they want to go, and also maximize the number of short trips in a single charge of the battery, while we can actually make a fairly longer trip in a single charge of the battery, one single longer trip. The vertical takeoff and landing guzzles a lot of power, so we need to have a fairly high power dense batteries as well as energy dense batteries, and that's a conundrum that we face as eVTOLs. The kind of duty cycles that we go through, we don't even bother about what is acceleration in under 60 seconds. Those are all like childish stuff for us. For us to first get up and go up there is actually a big thing, right? So no matter how slow or how fast, So we have to optimize for performance in those rather than trying to pander to people's wishes and stuff. And I think people understand that. So we believe that in the next year or two, we will see more places opening up for vertiports to get people to take off and land out of. And eventually we need to go through certification process of this entire thing. And that's actually the key thing. This is actually an aircraft, so which means that it has to go through a very detailed, horrendous certification process that detracts a lot of people from getting into it because they just don't understand what that is and so on. In fact, that seems to be like one key difference between ground automobiles and flying vehicles, where ground automobiles probably could get certified much more easily and quickly, whereas certification is a huge elephant in the room for these vehicles. I think that's something that deters a lot of people. It also could actually become capital intensive for that reason and so on. Yeah.
Savnan, interesting thing that Dinesh also said here, and we were having a discussion, and you work on this, was charging, right? And you help in with CPOs, to actually identify locations, right? Could just sort of talk through that a little bit, and then an open question saying, do OEMs support in this, right? Or because as you rightfully said, OEMs and everyone else makes money at the point of sale. For CPOs, it's over a period of time, right? So what is the sort of role that maybe OEMs can play in with helping the charging infrastructure?
Yeah. So I think, as I explained to you earlier, the car sellers are selling the cars or any vehicles per se, and the charger manufacturers are just selling the chargers. But if you are a company that taking up a CPO position, it's very difficult for you to see the ROI very fast. And especially if your adoption of EV vehicle is not very fast, then it is much harder for the CPOs to get back their ROIs. So that's where we come in to assist the CPOs to find the right locations. So at this point of time, from my perspective in Malaysia, what the OEMs are doing, they are not really into to become a CPO. For them, it's more of a product and they want to sell it. So that's where they are staying. Since our market is very much more smaller compared to India, one of the things that our national utility is doing, they are also taking up the responsibility to go and install a lot of chargers around the country. So this is not part of the tariff, but the company itself have to take some initiative to go and plug in the chargers around the country so that there will be more adoption of the EV vehicles. So that's one way it's happening in our country at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I actually come from and just quick introduction to Tafrin also. We're actually a fintech platform. We also have our own NBFC, so we facilitate financing in the EV space. Also launching some technology based on battery and driver behavior to facilitate more pools of capital coming into this ecosystem. And I've been in the fintech space for a very long time. One of the conundrum that we've always faced is fintechs versus banks. Are they collaborators or are they competitors? How do startups like yourselves look at traditional OEMs? Are they competitors or is there a way to collaborate?
Interesting question. So I think maybe Shresh and I might be able to give very different points of view, given that there are already incumbents in the scooter space. I think he's fighting a significantly different battle than I am. For us, I think we're still in some form or the other early movers in a way where we still don't have competitors. We maybe have another year for that. But here, I think for us, it's about discovering what the customer really is able to accept, right? I think scooter space, when players like Simple and Ather were coming up in 2020 and 2021, they really had that thing to understand, okay, is this something that the customer would want, or does the customer really just want total cost of ownership, right? And now we're in that period where we're discovering what does a motorcycle rider want when he goes out to purchase an electric motorcycle. Is it, again, now are the only people who are going to buy electric motorcycles people who use it for sales or Rapidos or deliveries? Are actual petrol heads are also going to be adopting motorcycles, right? I think, and that's what we're trying to bridge with whatever technology upgrade that we're bringing with our powertrain tech. But to answer your question, I think we would still be guinea pigs of sorts, at least for incumbents, and hopefully we don't stay guinea pigs for too long and start putting out enough products or enough vehicles on the road that by the time the incumbents come in, we also have a decent enough market share. I personally believe that there is enough of a market, but more importantly, for a player like Rapti, who's a new name in the industry, to survive against incumbents, we need to really make our value proposition clear to our customers very, very early on. So the next 12, 18 months, I think, is going to be very critical. I don't know if I answered your question straight, but
No, but you have.
Yeah, I mean, rightly Dinesh said that when we talk about the OEMs, right, the traditional players, because they have balance sheets, they have investors, they have to answer every quarter, all of that. So I think they are a little more skeptical when it comes to a new technology or new product coming in. That was the case of scooters as well, where there were startups who were there, who tested the waters for them, who proved the product, who proved the technology, adoption of it, and then probably the incumbent players or the larger players came in. And I think that's the thing that has been across for them as well. And collaboration, of course, the market is so huge. India is the biggest two-wheeler market in the world, that every player, even in the IC engine segment today, if we talk about, there are 5 to 7 players and everybody's making profits, right? So there is scope to collaborate. For example, I tell you a very interesting part, as Dinesh said. Dinesh was also talking about that there is no two-wheeler charging infrastructure available as such. It is because everybody has their own algorithm for charging. Everybody has their own connector that they're using for charging. So it has to be a common platform that helps not just the OEMs but also the customers. Because it's like for an IC engine player, if I have let's say a bike, I go to a Indian Oil petrol pump only, or probably an HP petrol pump only, right? So if you bring a common platform and a common kind of Android-like solution so that everybody can build on it, but the platform remains the same. So these are the things that people can collaborate, work towards, and probably that would benefit not just one company, but the whole industry and the customers as a whole. So I think that's one of the ways that the OEMs and the startups can collaborate. But again, there are multiple other avenues that probably other companies can also, but it also depends on their own business challenges, the stakeholders. So everything has to be in line. So there is scope, but let's see how that goes ahead with.
Vikat, we were discussing about role that the government and regulators can also play, right? And you were talking about the Telangana Mobility Valley. What role do you think that the entire larger ecosystem has to play for OEMs such as yourselves, and all startups to flourish? Are there any specific set of requirements or wish list that you would have that the government or regulators should concentrate on?
Okay, so that's a fairly longish answer, but I will avoid. I'll tell you. We were just talking about. The regulators can be enablers. The regulators can also be a deterrence, right? So I'll give you 2 examples. One just occurred to me when I was hearing the other speaker speak. For example, battery swapping, right? Many of us know there was a draft swapping policy. A lot of folks talked about standardization on the battery and how that can bring down the cost, how that can actually make the product better, and so on and so forth. But the policy did not see the light of the day, right? So which basically meant that is an example where it did not happen for various reasons, including fault from the OEMs and manufacturers and so on and so forth. That's on one side, right? On the other side, if I were to talk from a battery perspective, for example, there is this rooftop solar program which is going on. Many of you are aware, called PM Surya Ghar Yojana. Rooftop was a very sluggish program for a very long time, right? The solar prices have come down, but the rooftop never picked up. The reason for that is there was no policy incentive or a policy push or a policy mandate. So people did not know what would take, for me to put a solar, how do I get a net metering, and all of them. 10 months back, there was this policy called PM Surya Ghar Yojana. If you were to see in the last 8 months, we have touched 1 million installations, 10 lakh installation. That's an area where the policy could be an enabler. So I think, you really, really need policies which are going to be enablers. And for that, the ecosystem will have to play a very vital role, actually.
So just as an aside, as a staff, we also started solar right now, and very specifically for schools and warehouses. It's been around possibly longer than the EV ecosystem, but it is still not as seamless as the energy coming into your house when you switch on just a button, right? And that's the problem I believe that the EV industry is also facing, because the whole ICE purchase, driving, refueling or charging, the whole behavior is now so seamless, and there's no, and there's always an issue to change. But in the EV ecosystem and the EV usage experience, everything is broken, right? From, the dealerships possibly not being there to financing to charging, and just as an aside, I don't have a petrol pump close to my house there, and that gave me anxiety, right? And there was one which unfortunately shut down in Mumbai. There was a big accident, which meant that, I thought it would be solved for me, but then anxiety came back. Right? So I completely understand the whole charging behavior and why that leads to anxiety. First, Jagati, I just want to ask you, does academia really play a role in this? Is there a potential for, especially around, consumer education, or putting up, maybe common infrastructure that can be shared, especially by startups? Because otherwise, I'm sure these are heavy capex, and and the VC industry would need to sort of really get involved for players like us to scale. Is there a role for academia in consumer education as well as infra setup?
Well, it's evident that I think academia plays a fairly good role in fostering tech startups for sure. Consumer education, probably no. That's a simple answer. Maybe because with some exceptions, perhaps academia just wants to foster the product development, but not exactly the usage, and that's difficult. That is because there are things like, for example, algorithms that are developed in academia for what's good, like what's a good smart charging distribution around the city, and for its usage. But these things end up in paper publications and get presented in conferences that the common public does not necessarily attend or get. So there is some amount of work that's being done in the media to pull out, and also institutions are actually trying to showcase the kind of research that does pertain to common people's behavior out into the market by having like media cells that interface with media outlets and so on. But I think at the end of the day, professors are extremely boring, so media people don't really get excited about talking to them. So these are all problems that we have to solve.
Thank you. Professors are not boring at all, sir. What you're doing right now with e-playing company is quite exemplary. Samran, how's your experience, Mesh? Is it more startup driven on the OEM side, or are you seeing traditional OEMs that have been around sort of, leading the way there?
I think on our side it's more of OEM driven. Startup driven is pretty much still low. So we are pretty dependent on the OEM both for EV cars, chargers, even batteries. So it's very much on OEM related. But there are some startups coming up. But that's more on solution related, like software solutions and everything. But not entirely like how it is in India. For example, I can see that two-wheelers is more of a startup kind of thing. It's available, but not for us at the moment. We are very much on OEM driven. But I think just to answer the standardization thing, right? So my background was on electrical engineering. So in engineering, a lot of things are very standardized, like what you say for IEC, right? So for EV space, we are facing the similar problem. So at the moment, one of the things that we are trying to do is we are trying to set some level for the chargers at least. So we know that there are certain capacity will be allowed. For example, the upcoming houses that's being built now is considered for having an EV charger in front of their house. So there are certain allocation is being done. So which means any cabling works that we're going to give you to the house going to be slightly increased in terms of the capacity, so that once the people are ready to adopt the EV cars or EV vehicles, then it's easier for them to charge. So in Malaysia, I don't think so we're going to have any two-wheelers or three-wheelers like in India, because it's very different market. For us, it's more on four-wheelers like cars or other things. So mostly cars in our environment. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to standardize the amperage requirement, so that at least the homeowners knows that they can have at least like 2.2 or 3.2 kilowatt or up to 7 kilowatt chargers at home. So that's some standardization happening. But like you said, in terms of the bigger picture, it's still a bit broken, I would say.
So, Dinesh, again, have you, one of the strengths that traditional OEMs would have is of course the dealership network, right? Now, do you believe there's an opportunity for you to bypass an offline dealer network and create an online buying experience, or do you think it's too entrenched in the Indian mind and possibly the world over that sales as well as financing for vehicle happens only at dealer location?
Sure. Short answer, no. I don't think online is going to be an answer for this. That's because so again, my previous businesses were in automotive retail and automotive manufacturing. I've sold premium motorcycles for about a decade. What we've seen is more than anything, right? The more than advertisements, more than dealerships. What makes more difference is test rides. Motorcycles are usually sold on test rides. Either at the test rides can happen by in different ways, right? It can happen at a dealership. It can happen where the dealer brings a vehicle to your house, or it can just happen because your friend has another motorcycle and you give it to him for a quick test ride, right? So motorcycles only sell, especially premium motorcycles, only sell when somebody actually gets onto them and take it for a spin, right? So that's the primary reason why I believe online is not going to really make a big difference. The way that we're trying to counter that is by entering limited geographies. Again, we have a clear plan where we've kind of decided on the cities that we're going to enter based on a couple of things, right? One is the mid-size vehicle is what we're entering. So what's the mid-size penetration of federal powered vehicles? Number one. So, second, penetration of electric cars, because that's something that our customers are going to be able to relate to more than maybe, let's say, an electric moped of sorts. And third, most importantly, also charger penetration, which makes a huge difference, right? I think people are not really going to use public chargers, but just seeing public chargers is going to give people confidence to buy into electric vehicles. So the more public chargers people come across and see, the more they're going to get comfortable buying an electric vehicle. So that's how we're kind of looking at geographies. We're fine not expanding into 60, 70 cities like Shresh mentioned, just because we're still very early in our journey. We have to ramp up production. We already have a bunch of bookings that we want to cater to before we even think of really putting ourselves out there in multiple cities and expanding. So we're taking it slow, and I think that's the way that will probably work for us.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I also believe that any kind of automotive product, then we talk about specifically two-wheelers, is about the experience that a customer gets, right? The experience side of it plays a very important role. Until you touch, feel the quality of the product, the experience, that how the ride feels, how the suspension feels, all of that plays a very critical role. And especially when you're talking about a product which will be probably driven by multiple people in a family, so the customers want the opinion from every stakeholder. For example, we've seen cases where the choice of, let's say, the model's choice have changed because a 3 or a 4-year-old child wanted more boot space, or let's say he wanted to put a football into the boot space, right? So that's the kind of behavior that we've come across from the customer side. At the same time, the customer also also thinks about the after sale support, because it's not just a commodity that you just sell and take your hands off, right? So let's say after 6 months, 8 months, or probably 5 years down the line, where will I get my product serviced, right? Because that would be used for my probably daily commute to office, college, to pick my child from school, probably buy groceries. So it has to be serviced at a nearby place. And when you buy a product online, it's a little difficult, right? And that we've seen across the world. Even Tesla tried doing it in the US, where they also had to open the physical stores. And I think that would be the way forward. Plus, I think a little mix of digital and physical. I would say phygital is the way forward, but physical presence is the most important factor for any two-wheeler or any automotive product to be sold today.
Venkat, maybe one last question to you before we wrap up. How important is the role of data and using data to actually help multiple people in the ecosystem to as you were discussing, to do fleet P&L optimization, or for lenders to start to use data to underwrite differently, and are you seeing that the demand for data from batteries and in structured format is something that you're being asked for?
I think the intelligent data is the new oil is passe, right? I think we all know that today, for example, the kind of the world is moving towards this connected, shared electric mobility, right? We all sort of and every organization is just not adding electric as part of their one more portfolio. They are redefining their entire organization to to make that as a platform, right? So which means that whether it is a software defined vehicle, whether it is a data which is coming just not from the battery, not from the vehicle, not from the cluster, but it's one connected set of information that's you're talking about over the air upgrades, you're talking about digital twins. There is a tremendous amount of data that is playing a role there, and I believe that we haven't seen it's just the tip of the iceberg. So to answer the question, I don't any one of us in this room, if the stress on data and analytics is not there, I think we are in the wrong business actually.
Thank you so much. I think we sort of run out of time. Let me open this up to the audience if they have any questions. If I may ask just one more question, whoever can take that. We're seeing a bit of stress in the EV ecosystem right now, right? With a few early trailblazers starting shop. How do you guys see the evolution over the next few years? Maybe everyone can take like a minute each or half a minute each.
I think one of the things that people are not talking about, which doesn't only apply to the EV space, is that again, I don't mean this with any offense to anybody. I think we've created a beautiful early stage funding ecosystem. We've created a beautiful late stage funding ecosystem. The mid part is kind of missing, right? Where we're not really at the growth phase. I mean, where startups are not really at the growth phase yet. And this is more specifically for deep tech companies, where that early stage and growth stage are the line between that is a little blurred, right? I think that's also one of the primary reasons that we're seeing all of this happen. It's really disheartening to see some of really pioneers who kind of put the foundation for three-wheelers and battery tech kind of go out of business and kind of it gives me nightmares sometimes. And I think one of the ways that we're trying to tackle it is kind of bring down just monthly burn, but there's only so much you can do without compromising on what you originally set out for. So I think that's one of the things that I think can be improved if I were to put it from a what can be improved point of view. That's my 2 cents.
True, probably sir can add a little bit more on that. The deep tech funding, when we talk about India has been more of a VC driven market, which was like putting money, building a software and start generating revenue as soon as possible, right? But when we talk about deep tech companies or technology hardware products, you have to put in time to build, validate, test, and then only you can put those products out on the road to make sure that, because you're a customer who would be using it is probably putting his life on the line based on the product that you've sold him, right? So the patient capital requirement plays a very important role in the sector that we are. When we talk about not just EVs, but all the deep tech startups that we are today. So we at Simple have been focusing right now is work towards profitability so that you are not dependent on external money coming in and running your business.
I just have one additional point. Of all said and done, EV still depends on policies and subsidies, right? So today, if you look at it the last 2 years, every time there is a policy change, there is a dip in the sales, right? The policy comes back up, it picks. So there is a lot of uncertainties that way. I think that is one. So number 2, 2 years back, if you were to look at it, there were 20 players if I were to look at it for two-wheelers, right? And they had pretty much an equal market share, there's a lot of consolidation now happening, right? The top 5 players now have more than 90% of the market share. So I think it has to be independent of policy, and I do see that there is more and more consolidation happening actually.
I have 3 quick points to make. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I think the funding part came up in the first couple of discussions. So I don't think the investors have actually thought through what they need to fund and what they shouldn't. They are just in there for the flow. So we have the early stage people and then the late stage people. I don't think it's because they actually position themselves that way. It's just that when in 2021, for example, post-COVID, there was like a huge surge in funding. People were actually funding pretty much everything, and then there was a funding winter. So the funding climate changed, and all of a sudden, you're now finding that there is a gap in funding between the early stage and late stage. I think that's the problem that we have to live with and figure out what to do. And I think our guys, the panelists, actually did a great job explaining how they are tackling that. The second point is what I think Venkat said, and I would say it in a different way. I think it's one thing to actually talk about sustainability and all those things, but in the Indian market, we need to actually look at what's not only good for the planet but also good for the pocket. So if you are able to come up with something that is actually technologically superior but at a lower cost, right? That's where innovation comes into picture, or in a very, very affordable cost. That's what people will appreciate. Nobody's actually going to pay more for a electric, or nobody really cares about the environment as much, right? So innovation has to be to disrupt the cost structures while you're actually bringing something new to the table. You can't do something just for the sake of doing something new. You have to be able to make it affordable to people, and that is where one thing that I've actually always never found in EV is they always think about only the battery, right? And this is something that I can actually bring to the table as an aerospace engineer. You ask the question, do you have any new design philosophies, and you stopped it with them. You look at planes, they will always look the same. You'll never actually have like some styling and all those things. That's because we actually do science, right? Who is actually doing science to find the ultimate motorbike that will actually have the least drag, so that nobody else can actually make any better motorbikes and everybody else makes only that kind of a motorbike, right? I think the automobile people should actually move away from batteries and then say, can I actually lightweight structures? Can I improve the aerodynamics? There are lots of other things that you can do that will actually increase your range and give better things. You're not doing enough science at all. That's actually the biggest problem, right? So that's a lecture that I can give as a professor. The last part is actually about new batteries. And we need to actually move away from lithium. And the problem essentially is that investment has got locked into lithium. And we need to see when that investment will actually get freed up. I think a couple of panels back, there was a huge thing about recycling. So these things will actually begin to hit the face. And investors will start thinking about, okay, what next after lithium? That's when we will see some disruption, in my view.
Hi, this is Sanjay Siragoni from Tech Consulting. The question I have is, how important is patenting in getting funding for the EV industry? Because the general talk that, when I do is that, you have to have the patents. Only when you get the patents, you get the funding. I just want to know, is it really true?
I'm the one with actually the largest number of wounds on my chest for trying to get funding, right? And with all the patents and all that stuff. So investors can never be satisfied. If they ask for patents, you show patents, then they'll ask you for something else, right? So you have to actually cover all the bases. And so patents is good to have. Then the question is like, what's your go-to-market strategy? If you have go-to-market strategy, what is your revenue pipeline? There are like some 20 questions that you have to answer. Patents is just one of those.
Just to add, what Sir said is right. Investors, because there are different set of investors who look out for different things, right? So patents is just one part of it because you're trying to build a business. So you have to be focusing on other aspects as well. Patents, of course, tells you that the technology that you've built or the product that you've built is unique in a way, but at the same time, how scalable is that, how profitable that can be, how it can be converted into a business that can make revenues for you is probably one of the reasons, one of the things that investors might look out.
Basically, they're looking for if somebody else can actually copy you, right? Or how can you actually thrive in this market? All of these kind. That's all.